all my fellow Redskin brethren and sistren. It's news that's nightly about the Redskins. Welcome to the Redskins Nightly News. I am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So the Redskins fall to the Dallas Cowboys in their home opener, 31-21, to drop to 0-2 on the season and 0-2 in the division. Didn't sound like much of a home game. Talking to most people that were in attendance, didn't look like a home game. None of that is surprising whatsoever. What is surprising, however, is the calmness around Redskins Park, as if the Skins are 2-0 and no sense of urgency. I don't feel the sense of urgency that you would expect someone that is coaching for their job, you would think, would be in a position, and guys that are 0-2 and really weren't close on Sunday. That 31-21 final score doesn't really indicate how badly the Redskins were dominated in this football game. Unlike week one, when you were up and you felt good, and if a play goes this way or that way, it could have swung the total outcome of that game. You know, if Terry McLaurin catches the deep ball in week one, I shouldn't say if he catches the deep ball, if Case Keenum puts it on him, it's a different ball game. You know, and who knows what happens from there. We weren't one or two plays away in this game from the game. We were one or two plays from making this competitive, not winning the game. We were thoroughly outplayed. The Cowboys scored on 5 consecutive possessions. And yes, there were some missed calls by the officials. I don't really want to complain about the officiating because it was bad both ways. It was bad both ways. All right? We got a phantom roughing the passer penalty on DeMarcus Lawrence where he went low on Case Keenum. What do you want the man to do? That was trash. We got some calls our way that benefited us. It was bad. It was bad officiating both ways. We just weren't good enough. We got outplayed by a much better football team, simply put. However, we need to play better. And I don't get a sense that they understand that right now we're not good enough. And I listened to the post-game presser, and the thing that struck me as disturbing is that Jay just came out and said, we're not making any changes to the staff. We're not going to panic. Well, when do you hit the panic button? All right? I was mashing the panic button yesterday, okay? Because when I looked at the schedule, I had us winning one of the first 2 games. That game was at home versus Dallas. I didn't have us starting the season off 0-2. I don't think we're beating the Bears next week on Monday Night Football. Not like the Bears are world beaters, but I didn't have us beating the Bears in week 3. So if we start 0-3, let's say we do go to the Meadowlands and beat the Giants. We're still 1-4 because we're not beating the Patriots the following week. You're 1-4. All right? 1-4 to start the season off. You're dead. You're dead. Yet, all I'm hearing is excuse making and guys talking about not wanting to panic. Now, we'll get to Jay's presser from today because I always like to hear Jay the day after. He's had a chance to digest the film. He's got a much clearer head. Things that he says after the game, I don't usually take to heart because he's frustrated at that very moment. I know I would be. So I don't take what Jay says in the moment literally. Okay? I don't take it literal and I don't go running off with it. So when he says, we're not making any changes, I said, okay, you're just mad right now. You don't want to say anything out of frustration. Let's see how you feel after you watch the film. So we'll get to what was said today and how I feel about what was said today a little bit later on in the show. But I want to focus on the actual play on the field and talk about what I saw, guys that stood out, things that were disturbing and need to be changed if this team is going to have any chance moving forward. Look, as Jay said over and over again, Jay was on a excuse-making binge, although he kept saying not to make excuses, but then he would go and make excuses. We played some good football teams in weeks 1 and 2. All right, they were to me, better teams than we were. That doesn't mean that we couldn't have beat either one of them, but they were better teams and they proved it. Now, Sunday's game, yesterday, here are some things that I thought the Redskins did well. I thought that the Redskins overall along the offensive line in the past game for the second consecutive week did a good enough job of protecting Case Keenum. Now, again, they aren't doing a good enough job in the run game. All right. But again, I don't love Jay Gruden's run scheme. I don't like his rush offense. I don't like what he's asking these offensive linemen to do. So I don't know if this will ever be the run game that we want it to be. Unless we're facing a bad rush defense, I don't think we're going to have the type of success that we were all hoping for when this season started. We've seen what this Redskins rush offense looks like against good rush defenses. We're going to face another one in the Bears on Monday. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Now, the Giants in week 4, and I don't want to go too far ahead. The Giants in week 4, you can run the football against them. Maybe we'll have some success there, but we still got the Bears to talk about. But let's finish wrapping up the Cowboys before we get ahead of ourselves. So I thought the offensive line, pass protecting wise, did a solid job. Yep, we had penalties like we always do, but for the most part, I thought that the offensive line gave Case Keenum a fighting chance to deliver the football. And I thought the offensive line for the second consecutive week was good enough. They weren't great, but they were good enough. Morgan Moses, to me, struggled the most out of anyone on the offensive line in this game. But he was facing DeMarcus Lawrence. So, again, and I don't want to sound like Jay Gruden making excuses because, Morgan Moses is thought to be one of the better right tackles in all the football. Then you need to be able to block one of the better edge rushers in all the football. So, and for the most part, again, he held up. Let's say there were 60 offensive snaps, and I don't know how many there were. But let's just go with a round number like 60. If there were 60 offensive snaps, I thought he was beaten on 5 of them. That's a lot in the grand scheme of things. 5 snaps can change the course of a game. Hell, 2 snaps can change the course of a game. But if out of, let's say Case Keenum threw it 35 times. If he threw it 35 times and you got beat on 5 snaps, that's a lot. And I thought that's probably where we were with Morgan Moses in this game. So he's got to be better. But all in all, I thought overall the offensive line as a whole did a good enough job of protecting Case Keenum. You look at the receivers. I thought Paul Richardson had his best game. And I know we're only 2 games in, but he was much better this week than he was last week with the drop. We got nothing out of the tight end position. So that was a little disappointing. But no Jordan Reed. I thought Vernon Davis might be able to do something because I feel like you can take advantage of the Cowboys at the tight end position if you have a scheme designed to do so. But without Jordan Reed, I don't think they actually designed any plays to get the tight end the football, and you saw that. I don't know if Vernon Davis even had a target or a catch in this game. He might have had a target underneath as a check down, but I don't think they actually made a concerted effort to get him the football. So that was a little disappointing, but the receivers were actually pretty good. Trey Quinn had some good catches. Run after the catch has been really good. Had a nice catch on that drive that cut the deficit from, I think at the time, the score was 24-7. To cut it to 24-14, he had a nice catch and run on a 3rd down that got us into scoring range that set up the Paul Richardson touchdown. So I thought Trey Quinn did some good things. Paul Richardson, like I said, scored the touchdown. I thought he had a couple of solid catches in this game. Right now, the biggest standout on offense for me is Scary Terry. He looks legit. He looks like the real deal. He's physical. He can catch it with his hands. He's running back shoulder fades now. We know he can get behind the defense. He got behind the defense again in this game on the very first play of the game. If Case Keenum makes a better throw, you're talking about another potential 75-yard touchdown to start off the game. All right, we had another shot at a big play, and Case Keenum threw the football behind him and had him playing defensive back instead of running under the football. But Case Keenum's strength was never throwing a deep ball, so it is what it is. But we know he can get behind guys. We've seen him muscle up and catch the football in traffic. I saw him box out Byron Jones for a back shoulder fade for a touchdown late in the ball game. So he's got everything working for him right now. He's a technician as a route runner. really like what Terry's doing. And so right now, he's the biggest bright spot we have on the offensive side of the football. Um, you look at the defensive side, and to me, Daron Payne early in the game was a man beast. He was the guy that single-handedly made the Cowboys offense uncomfortable. After they made the adjustment of double teaming him, we got no pressure. There wasn't a lot of pressure on Dak Prescott. There were a couple of times we had him bottled up. He still got loose. We weren't disciplined on read option. There were a couple of times where he kept it and the Redskins were nowhere to be found. And really, a lot of that blame can be placed on Casanova McKenzie. He hasn't been in this rivalry very often. This is really his first time playing against the Cowboys. And I know he played at Auburn in the SEC, and he's seen read option before. You don't see it a ton in the NFL. He sold out on run down the line and gave up the edge. He was supposed to be at home on that long-ass Dak Prescott run, on that amazing 7-play, 93-yard drive that they went on, which was just embarrassing. And that long-ass run Dak had, that was all Casanova McKenzie not staying at home. There was a holding penalty on that play that was not called. Everybody saw it. Saw a couple of tweets about it. You can't miss that, especially when you're calling every damn thing else. Can't miss that. Out wide open in the middle of the football field. I need that to come back, but that's no here nor there. Casanova McKenzie's got to stay at home. Cole Holcomb, I thought he was solid again. Had a great play on a screen pass to Zeke Elliott early in his ball game where he cleaned him up for a loss on the play. I saw him hesitate late in the game when we needed a stop, and it was 3rd and 3, and the Cowboys decided to run Zeke Elliott, and we could have made a stop. And Cole Holcomb had an opportunity. It was a great job by the defensive line of holding up the offensive lineman, and all he had to do was shoot the gap like he did in Week 1 versus the Eagles, and he hesitated for a second. He got in the hole, and instead of him shooting his gun and just going, he stopped. And that gave the offensive lineman a chance to come off the double team and get to him. If he would have just shot through that hole like he did in Week 1, he would have gotten the backfield, bottled up Zeke Elliott, and it would have forced the Cowboys to punt at 31-21, which would have given us a shot at potentially cutting this thing to 31-28 or 31-24 with a chance to maybe get back in this ball game. There was still plenty of time, like 7 minutes left in the game at that time. He gave up the run. He stopped. That offensive lineman peeled off that double team, got to him, and Zeke Elliott was then able to stop his feet, turn, and then cut it back, put his head down, and get 4 yards and a first down. And that pretty much was all she wrote after that. That felt like the dam breaking right there on that play. Cole Holcomb had a chance to make a play. And when I went back and watched some of the bigger plays in the game, there was one in particular that made me just made my stomach upset. I went back and watched the Josh Norman play. That was just really good design by the Cowboys. And that seems to be the Redskins' kryptonite. You know, you send a couple of over routes that threaten the safety. And again, I don't blame Monte Nicholson for seeing Randall Cobb come across the field wide ass open and running up on that. I still blame Josh Norman, even though he was playing with outside leverage, assuming he was going to have inside help. He actually slowed his feet down. If you watch that play, he didn't know the ball was coming. He slowed down for an instant, and then he saw the ball and tried to speed back up. He didn't have that kind of speed. You can't be taking your foot off the gas pedal knowing you don't have that kind of makeup speed. And so I still put the blame on him getting beat there. If he would have been running at top speed the entire time, I think he might have been able to challenge that throw. But he stopped and it was just a split second. But that's all that it takes when you don't have 4.4 speed. And he never did. So that was disappointing. I don't blame Monte Nicholson, even though he was probably supposed to be in center field there. The Cowboys had a good concept there of 2 over routes that challenged the safety, that forced him to make a decision. He made the wrong one, but I don't blame him for making that decision because again, you want to keep everything in front of you though. So while I'm not upset at him. He does not need to leave Josh Norman on an island essentially. But that's nor here nor there. Josh still should have been able to make that play. He also almost, and I don't know what kind of angle he was taking on that other deep ball that should have been completed, but Dak missed. Gallup wide open. He was all over the damn place. He was inside, he was outside, he was zigging, he was zagging. Bruh, what are you doing? He was all over the place, lost in the sauce. So it was not a good day for Josh Norman. But again, when you watch some of the plays, the one that upsetted me the most, the one that made my stomach turn, was we finally get a holding penalty on the Cowboys. It's 1st and 20. We got a shot to maybe keep them in a 3rd and long situation. And on 1st down, you know what we do? We run the worst soft zone coverage known to mankind. And Michael Gallup hooks up after 15 yards and then turns up the field and gets an additional 2. And just like that, 1st and 20 is 2nd and 3. Are you kidding me? Are you serious right now? Like, that's loser football right there. You know? That's loser football, and the lack of pressure coupled with guys playing often soft, and just the inability to Jason Witten on a 2nd and long is after another Cowboys penalty that pushed them backwards, another holding penalty. They had more penalties on the day than we did. Okay? For those of you that want to blame the officials, they had more penalties than we did. And it's 2nd and 20. And Jason Witten is running wide ass open on a post over the middle of the football. Are you serious? Old ass Jason Witten? Wide open? You gotta be kidding me. So right now we have zero confidence, and the lack and Jay talked about the injuries in the secondary, and they did have a little bit to do with what the Redskins were able to do defensively. I don't want to hear that though, because I still want pressure on the quarterback no matter who's on the football field. But we were banged up to the point where we saw DRC. We all saw DRC get injured on like the 2nd possession of the game, and the man is limping around and he shouldn't be on the field, yet he's on the field limping around. And I'm surprised the Cowboys didn't attack him more early in the game, because he had no business being on the field. The man could barely walk, let alone run. And yet he was hobbling around on the field because we didn't have the corners. We were so banged up in the secondary. At one point, DeShazer Everett was out at corner, and he used to be a college cornerback. So it's not like he's foreign to being a corner, but he's made the transition to safety. We had him at corner on 1 3rd down. I'm like, I'm nervous over here. So it was not a good look for the defense. Montez Sweat, I watched him closely. I don't think he even got close. It got to a point where they took him off the field and put Casanova McKenzie on the field. And Casanova had a couple of good rushes, man. He really did. Unfortunately, we didn't hold up on the back end enough, and those two need to be married a bit. Sometimes you need the quarterback to take a hitch, to pat the ball once or twice and give your rush a chance to get there. On those particular plays where we actually won, when Kerrigan won, when Casanova McKenzie won, he was able to get rid of the football whenever the hell he wanted to. And then there were times where we had no rush, and Dak was able to pat it 17 times and then deliver the football to a wide open guy. The pass rush simply isn't good enough. We didn't blitz. It was a travesty defensively. It really, really was. And then as the game wore on, I actually thought the rush defense wasn't that bad. They had a couple of good hits. I actually thought the rush defense wasn't that bad, but when guys over pursue, I saw John Bostic over pursue too many times. He's supposed to be playing the backside gap. Instead, he wants to press front side hard, and then Zeke sticks his foot in the ground, goes backside, and cuts it back. And John Bostic gets caught in the wash, and all of a sudden, he's to the 2nd level for a 12, 13-yard gain. That happened too many times. Too many times in this game. And so you got to be smarter. All right? The front side is contained. They don't need you up there. They need you on that backside, because there were times where he could have run through that back gap, that C gap on the backside, and come to Zeke Elliott and got to the ball carrier. Instead, he's pressing hard front side, looking to get to the A gap, B gap, front side, and now Zeke's cutting it back to the A gap on the other side. Well, you should have been there. So, again, it's about run fits. It's about guys we didn't make enough plays. You know, at some point, players have to make plays. How about you disengage, beat a guy's ass, throw him like a rag doll, and make a play as a defensive lineman? How about as a linebacker, you see the run, you see it, you shoot your gun, and you get in the backfield like Cole Holcomb did in week 1 versus the Eagles. Like at certain points, you got to make plays. All right. So your defensive coordinator isn't going to give you a chance to blitz and make a play and be special that way. Then you got to go win individual matchups. And unfortunately for us, we don't win enough of them. You know, one-on-one situations, we're getting beat. Man-to-man, zone, we're horrible in zone coverage. Or we are outmatched in zone coverage. We're just not good enough right now. And so there weren't many good takeaways defensively. I didn't have many. For me, Daron Payne was one of my lone good takeaways, and that was early in the game. Offensively, Terry McLaurin is about it, along with the offensive line's ability to pass protect at this point. Case Keenum wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible either. But he missed some throws. He had a wide open Paul Richardson screaming down the middle of the football field for a touchdown. I talked about this yesterday. Other teams give up big plays too, right? Like, we're not the only ones. They just hit them, and we don't. So you had Terry McLaurin on the first play of the game. That should be a big game. Even if it's not a touchdown, that should be a 55-yard game deep in the Cowboys territory. But Case Keenum throws a flutter ball. I don't know what the hell that ball was doing, but it was dancing in the air because at one point, Terry was streaking across the field where he should have been going, and then he looks up, and he's tracking the ball going in the opposite direction, and then he realizes, oh shit, I got to play defender and try to knock it away. It's a terrible throw. Terrible throw. Then you got Paul Richardson wide open, and Case decides to check it down, almost throws a pick, okay? A little bit of pressure by the Cowboys, but you got to see that play coming, and you got to see Paul Richardson shaking free, and you got to let that ball go. And he said after the game during his presser, that's when I want back. I missed that one. He was wide open. I can't miss that one. Well, you did. All right. And then Chris Thompson, I told you, he saved his worst throw for the arguably the biggest play in the game. Chris Thompson, a Jay Gruden staple, where you run a couple of rub routes, guys running some slants, and then Chris Thompson running out into the flats, into the clear, and you get it to him immediately, and you let him pick up the first down. And it was there. A good throw, and it's a first down, and he airmails it. So Case Keenum wasn't sharp. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't sharp enough. And so somebody said on Twitter, and I thought this was a really good point, that we're probably getting Minnesota Case Keenum, not Denver Case Keenum, and we're wasting him. That's how I feel. That tweet was apt. I think we are getting Minnesota Case Keenum because he hasn't turned it over yet. He's tried, but he hasn't turned it over yet. And he's actually playing solid ball. And if we were better defensively, we would have won maybe even both of these football games with the way he's played. But if we're going to play defense this way, he wasn't good enough in this game. He was good enough last game. He wasn't good enough this game. So not much to take away in a positive manner if you're asking me in this football game. Whereas after the Philly game, I was feeling really good. And that's why I thought we could win this game. But the way we played in this game, we weren't going to beat any good team playing the way we played in this game. So you go from that to in other news, and we get to the day after presser. So Jay had a chance to digest what was a really disappointing performance by the Redskins versus the Cowboys, in which there was little resistance defensively, especially in the second half. Remember, this game was 14-7 at halftime. We were in this game, and if not for the officials missing a holding call on Tyron Smith that would have offset penalties on Jimmy Moreland and himself, and it would have brought up third down again, maybe the Redskins get away with a field goal there, and it's 10-7, and it's a different ball game instead of 14-7 after the holding penalty on Jimmy Moreland. So remember, it was only 14-7 at half. We had a chance to come out and establish ourselves in the second half by getting a stop. Same scenario posed itself, just like the Eagles game. Get a stop to start the second half and maybe get off to a better start in the second half. Instead, the next two drives were probably the saddest drives of the game for the Redskins defensively. The first drive of the second half, and then the Redskins, after the Cowboys take the 21-7 lead, they allowed the Cowboys to go right back down the field again with little to no resistance. And if not for the holding penalty on Amari Cooper, that's a touchdown. But there was little to no resistance on those two drives. I mean, it was as bad as it gets. And then the last drive to make it 31, you just wrestled what little momentum you could away from the Cowboys by making it 24-14. You go for it on fourth down, you convert, you get into the end zone. Now you need the defense to make a stop. If there was ever a time you needed the defense to come up with a stop, a turnover, something, this was it. And the Cowboys made it look easy right down the field. Get in the end zone, end of the game. And what the hell was DeShazer Everett doing diving on that play when the ball was pretty much past him at that point? I don't know. Don't ask me. Stop asking. So after Jay had a chance to digest the film and see what went on in the game and come back and say some things that could give us hope, instead he stepped up to the podium and gave us the same bullshit ass excuses he gave us after the game. That we're missing a bunch of players. And again, some of these are legit. We were down several corners and DRC got hurt in the game. So, and the corners that we have on the roster are young. They just literally got here. Going to talk about one of them today in Aaron Colvin. Redskins snuck that transaction in on Friday, and I figured I'd just wait because of the time and the placing of the signing. I thought I'd just wait to talk about it here on Monday. So we'll talk about Aaron Colvin and what he means for this football team potentially moving forward. But between Colvin and the 6th-round pick of the Cleveland Browns that was released and then picked up by the Seattle Seahawks, and then we snatched him off of their practice squad, and Simeon Thomas, the Redskins didn't have a lot of depth at corner. A lot of guys that had just gotten here. So there wasn't much you could do defensively. And that's why I would have just said, play man-to-man and blitz. At that point, what do you got to lose? All right? Everybody knows how to play man-to-man. You don't have to be complex to say, hey, Aaron, jump on Randall Cobb in the slot, play man-to-man. Hey, Simeon, jump on Jason Witten in the slot, play man-to-man. It doesn't take much to play man-to-man and blitz. So I don't want to hear the excuses. And that's all I heard today from Jay was, oh, Jonathan Allen was out. We were down a couple of corners. Monte was a little banged up. So was DRC. We couldn't do a lot defensively. That's a really good Cowboys team. How many times are you going to tell me that that's a good Cowboys team? I know that's a good Cowboys team. All right? I don't need you to keep telling me that that's a good Cowboys team. I want you to stop with the excuses and figure out how to fix this shit. Because Jonathan Allen showing up isn't going to just get pressure. All right? Getting corners back in the secondary isn't going to get pressure on the quarterback. That's not going to change. It's not. You might have better coverage in the back end. You may not be giving up big plays, but you're still not getting to the quarterback. So how are we going to do that? I didn't hear an answer for that. I didn't hear anybody taking culpability for that. I heard excuses at the podium today. That was really disappointing. And again, the sense of urgency that I was looking for, I needed Jay to come out, and I'm not necessarily saying cold red, but that's the kind of urgency that I need at 0-2, going into a Monday night game against a team that's better than you in the Chicago Bears. I need cold red action, Jay, that knows that his job, I don't know if Jay realizes his job potentially is on the line. Maybe his job isn't on the line. Maybe we're overestimating how hot Jay's seat really is. Because Jay seems real comfortable for a dude that just lost the first 2 games of the season and is staring the Chicago Bears at home on a Monday night in which you won't be actually playing at home. In case you don't know, the Bears travel very well. He seems awfully calm for a coach that's coaching a team that defensively doesn't look like they can stop a wet paper towel right now. He sounds awfully confident. For a run game that's averaging 1.8 yards a carry, he sounds awfully confident. For a coach with penalties every week that keeps setting your team back and you keep telling me, we just got to correct it. Well, shit, Jay, how? Yesterday, after the game, you said, we're not getting through to the players. Today, you said, yeah, we're getting through to the players. How, Jay? How can we tell? Because the same shit is happening every week. How do we know you're getting through to the players? I can't tell. How do we know you're going to clean up the defense? Because you haven't cleaned it up for the whole 6 years you've been here. The defense has been terrible. How, Jay? How do we know? We don't. That's why we need change. Because obviously what you're doing isn't working, and definitely what Greg Manusky is doing isn't working. Now, Jay's pass offense, as I've said numerous times, and I went back and watched the game, dudes were open, man. There were times where I thought that Case Keenum worked the wrong side of the field. There were times where I thought Case Keenum stared down receivers. And had he surveyed the field, I think he would have had some other options. Like the Paul Richardson play, for example. He had already locked in on what he was going to do. Instead of him reading out the field and seeing where the coverage dictated he should have went with the football. He had already locked in. And that's why if Jeff Heath was looking for the ball instead of looking at the receiver, he would have had a pick six. Then their other safety, Xavier Woods, if he could catch, he would have walked to the end zone with 6. So I just heard a bunch of excuses from Jay. And I heard a lot of dancing around the answers and not actually giving us an answer. And so at this point, I don't have a lot of confidence because the only thing that I can see that can help this team get better in enough time to salvage this season is to fire Greg Manusky, and he's not doing that right now. And the excuse that he gave isn't a credible excuse because when we're at 100% health defensively, we got the same issues. All right? We got the same exact issues. Can't get pressure on the quarterback, giving up big plays in the secondary, giving up cushions, often soft, and down and distance situations that don't require that. Shit, ain't nothing going to change when we get healthy. But yet, that's his excuse. As if we were a top 10 defense before the injuries, and once we get these guys back, we'll go back to being a top 10 defense. But in any event, Aaron Colvin was signed by the Redskins on Friday evening after he was surprisingly released by the Houston Texans. And he had just signed with the Texans this offseason. And that was a big free agent get for them. And or it might have been last offseason. I take that back. And he was really good in Jacksonville. Like, one of the best nickel corners in all of football in Jacksonville, which prompted him to get the deal with the Texans. And it just didn't work out for whatever reason in Houston, and they cut him loose. This guy's talented. Now, I don't know what happened in Houston, how he's being utilized, what was the case. And obviously there was a lot more talent on the defense in Jacksonville than there was in Houston, and maybe that he was a liability in Houston because they weren't getting the type of pressure that they were getting on the quarterback in Jacksonville. I don't know. I do know that this guy can play ball in the slot, and he's going to give us a veteran presence in the nickel package. Jimmy Moreland, as much as I like Jimmy, Jimmy struggled early in the season. Teams have went after Jimmy. Jimmy struggled a little bit. He's young. I like Jimmy still. But we were hoping that Jimmy would just burst onto the scene and be a big-time player for us, and Jimmy's got work to do. He's a 7th-round pick for a reason. I think Aaron Colvin can come in and give us some really quality snaps in the nickel. I really like what this guy brings to the table. Now, how fast can he get up to speed on what we're doing? I don't know. Again, for me, I would simplify things if I'm the defensive coordinator. I'm simplifying things and I'm trying to get after teams with pressure. So I'm not trying to have all these exotic looks and because it seems like your players aren't digesting it anyway. They're not executing these exotic zone coverages and schemes. They're blowing them. They're busting them. And guys are running free. So instead of expanding the defense, how about you restrict it a bit, make it simpler because obviously these guys are out on the field trying to think instead of just playing. That's when guys play at their best, when they're not thinking but just playing. Well, there's not a lot of that going on because we're doing too much. Well, I don't know what's going to happen and how Aaron Colvin is going to be utilized, but the guy can play ball. And if we get the Jacksonville version of Aaron Colvin and not the Houston version, we could have ourselves a real steal in the nickel with Aaron Colvin. So we'll see how that goes. He's going to add to the depth on this roster. We should be getting healthier. Jay also said that it's looking good for guys like Jordan Reed. Again, we don't know with the concussion. I thought he was playing last week. So at this point, I'm not even going to speculate on Jordan. We'll see what happens with him. Fab is really close. We thought he had a chance to play. So the assumption is he'll play this week. They feel really good about Jonathan Allen playing this week. Sounds like Jay says he's going to take some individual work on Wednesday. So by all accounts, it seems like we're going to get some of these guys back in the fold in week 3. And then again, the extra day off is going to help, being that the Redskins are playing on a Monday night. So we'll see how it happens and how the week progresses and how these guys are able to get onto the practice field. But I really don't know at this point, man. I'm honestly at a point now where I want to be hopeful, you know how I am, but I'm also looking towards the future. So let's close the show out by kind of setting the table for tomorrow. Tomorrow we will kind of close the book on Dallas, start to turn our attention towards Chicago, and maybe dive a little bit deeper into the Trent Williams situation. Now there are some injuries around the league. If you're the Redskins at this point, you need. I just think you need to get something. You know, this isn't worth salvaging at this point. Maybe if the Redskins started off the season 1-1 and you had some hope going into this Monday night game, and who's to say, maybe they win against Chicago and then they beat the Giants and all of a sudden you're 2-2. Then having Trent back all of a sudden isn't that bad of an idea. But if this season is going the way that I think it's going to go, at this point, you're building for the future. And Trent's obviously not a part of the future. Get something for him and move forward. So with all the injuries, the Patriots have an injury. The 49ers have a big injury to Joe Staley. They're 2-0 right now. They seem like they're right where they want to be. And a guy like Trent Williams, who is very familiar with Kyle Shanahan and his scheme, that might be an option for them. And Staley's not going to be out the entire season, but he is going to be out for at least 8 weeks. If I'm the 49ers, I don't know if I want to trade for a guy knowing my tackle is coming back this season at some point. But you need somebody to hold it down for you in the interim. So I don't know if anybody's willing to give up anything. I think it's going to take a team losing their tackle for the entire season, not for a partial amount of the season. So, you know, the Patriots' injury to their tackle, Isaiah Wynn, is a toe injury. It's minor, it sounds like. I'm not trading for Trent Williams if my tackle's coming back. Same thing with the 49ers. He's going to be out for a while, but 8 weeks, like I said, but he's going to be back. And if he's going to be back and you know he's going to be back, there's no reason to trade for Trent. So we'll keep monitoring that situation because eventually Trent's going to come back. But at this point, I don't even want him back. I just want draft capital and I want to move on. Okay? So we'll see what happens. But in any event, I'm your man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me on the Redskins Nightly News. We'll talk more about the Dallas game tomorrow, turn the page, and start looking forward to Chicago. If anything comes out of Redskins Park, you'll hear it here on the Redskins Nightly News tomorrow. Hopefully, I'll get the poll back up. I know some of you are like, man, to hell with the poll. I want the poll, okay? So I'm going to try to get that fixed and get that back up and running. But in any event, we got skin in the game because we're Skins fans for life. Although at times it's tough, we're rough and we're rugged and we're Skins fans for life. So I thank you guys for joining me. This has been the Redskins Nightly News. See you guys tomorrow. Louie T.